Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. When I started this podcast in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women business owners, creatives, and entrepreneurs. In each episode, my guests provide resources, valuable tips, and inspiration. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strength to achieve success on their own terms. Did you know that you can find the Women Entrepreneurs Radio podcast on many podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube also? If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to share your feedback and a review. 5 stars is always great, because the more that you share your feedback, the easier it will be for the show to be found by more listeners. So I hope you'll take a moment to do that. And as well, you can stop by the blog, womenentrepreneursradio.com, and you can find extended bios of the show guests and articles and announcements of interest to women business owners. So please make sure you stop by the blog and also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Oh, wait, before you go, you can also stop by dbaileycoach.com to find out more about my nonfiction books and about my online writing courses for fiction authors. And dbaileycoach.com/brightbooks is where you'll find my paranormal and fantasy romance novels. And now, let's get started with the show. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. I'm really glad that you could join us today. And we are going to discuss a really important topic that I thought was something that we should go over during these times. And it has to do with self-care. And particularly how, we can take care of our mental and emotional health. I think that's really key, depending on, what your experience has been over this past year and some. I think this is something that we all need to consider. So, I'm going to introduce my guest, Faith Saunders. And she's been a trainer for over 20 years. She started her career at the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey, where she worked for over 12 years. And during this time, she received a master's degree in psychiatric rehabilitation from the same, and later became an adjunct professor at the School of Health-Related Professionals. And she transitioned to being a full-time entrepreneur in 2014. And at Discover a New Future, she provides leadership, personal and career development trainings, and consultation services to various groups and organizations throughout New Jersey. So welcome to the show, Faith. I'm really glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Deborah. A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and actually, you've definitely been out before, so this isn't the first time that you have joined me on this show, but I think this is a very important topic for us to discuss, and I want to connect with you, particularly for this, because I know that you're working on a course, and also a lot of your emphasis has been on self-care and on mental health and all of those things. So really want to get started talking about this idea of self-care. From your perspective, how would you define that, or even better, how do you work with that idea, that concept of self-care?
That's a really good question, Deborah. Self-care, in my opinion, I don't have the official, I'm not doing a webinar, so I don't have the official definition, but it is a conscious effort by an individual to do what's in their best interest so that they can live a healthy life. And I use the word conscious very, not loosely. I think it's at times we're so busy with life that it's so easy not to take care of ourselves. And I'm talking about our different areas of wellness, because normally when we talk about self-care and wellness, we are referring to our physical wellness. So, are we exercising, eating right, sleeping, and which is very, very important. But there is studies that show that in order to live a balanced life, there are 8 key areas of our life that we have to take into consideration. And I do a lot of work around that, and that is not only a physical or emotional, which is where most people don't want to go. That's the big bad word. You don't use emotional. People don't want to deal with their emotional, mental wellness. We have social, we have financial, occupational, environmental, social, spiritual. I think I left out 1 or 2, but you get the point. But there are all these key areas of our lives that we need to take conscious effort in terms of taking care of. And one of the key things is that these are not individual or they're interrelated. That's the word I want to use. They're all interrelated, because if our mental wellness, if we don't have mental wellness, it can trickle down in terms of our physical wellness. Maybe we stop eating right. We may not be exercising. Maybe it impacts our finances also, right? So it has all this rippling effect, each of them. And so it's very important for us to take into consideration all of those areas. So to answer your question, it's a conscious effort to take care of oneself so you can live a healthy and meaningful life in all these areas.
And
did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes. So what is your take on how COVID has changed a lot of that?
Oh, wow. COVID has changed the landscape in terms of wellness. There are people who, for example, the way that we used to live our lives, we used to go to the gym, we used to have the freedom. And that was one of the things you and I were talking about earlier, having the freedom to choice to do the things that we want to do, like go to the gym or whatever. We don't have that freedom anymore. This COVID has kind of, in a sense, taken that away from us. And so, especially now, it's very important for us to be creative and conscious in terms of how we're going to take care of our wellness. So COVID has taken away certain freedom, but also certain things, our boundaries that we actually created for ourselves so that we could actually function. So I'll use the example. Many of our homes, especially if you have children, are not only our workspace, but now it's school. For some of us, it's the gym. You could just continue naming. There is no boundaries within our household. And it's a lot of people are finding very difficult to deal with that, because I've been doing a lot of trainings, and I talk a little about a state-funded initiative here in New Jersey to help New Jerseyans cope with this pandemic emotionally, to address the emotional component of it to help people to cope. But before I go there, one of the things that I'm hearing on all these webinars that I've been facilitating since April of last year is that this isolation this COVID is impacting them mentally, emotionally, and sometimes people are not even aware. It's so interesting when you hear people that you see the aha moment when a person said, "Oh, that's what's happening to me." I'm snapping at my kids. It's impacting me emotionally. People are not able to make the connection in terms of what's happening in their lives. So this COVID pandemic has significantly impacted people's lives emotionally. Most of the time, they're not even aware that it's happening or that it's having this toll on them. I'm not talking about what I'm hearing for people who are single or living by themselves and not having that interaction with others. We're social beings, and although sometimes many of us may not want to be with around people a lot, at least when we have a choice, we can decide who we want to be around or who we don't want to be around, But with this pandemic, it's like we're so totally limited in terms of how to create those social interactions. And although we have technology, thank goodness for technology in one respect, because we would not be able to do all of this, connect with people on webinars and all of these different things, it still does not replace the social in-person interaction that we do have.
Well, that's a good point. And I think we were talking about before, I was saying it's being an introvert. What's the big deal? I don't see a problem here. You know, so I think from an introvert's point of view, it's kind of like,
this is like an introvert's heaven, right?
It is. I mean, you know, I think, oh my God, I really have to laugh because I mean, I'm going back to when I decided to, major in, English, and I really kind of fought that for my own issues, my own reasons. And people are like, oh, what are you going to be, a teacher? And I'm like, there's more to do besides teach. There's nothing wrong with being a teacher. But that doesn't just, you know, English major doesn't equal teacher. You know, there's other things you can do with that. And then suddenly at a certain point, people are like, oh, soft skills are important. So, and I'm like, hey, communication skills are hot now, where before nobody wanted to hear that. So it's like now being introvert and a nerd is important now, but before it was like you were terrible. Nobody wanted nobody wanted to be bothered with you, but now suddenly it's an advantage. And I think like we were saying that there's a balance, and I know that you know that because you and another one of my friends, our friend Sharon, will try to pry me out of the house from time to time. And it's like, I'm like, well, I gotta get dressed. I don't know. So you know, I'm like, it's just that thing about you that you're like, do I want to go out there and deal with people? And to some degree, it's wonderful, but then sometimes you're like, I don't know if I have the energy to do that. But I think as you were saying, balance is really the key here. And I would think in self-care, people having a balance in their lives really is the key to them having some kind of a healthy experience.
Oh, say? Definitely. Having that balance and it's going to differ for one person to the other. And again, that's like a personal thing. You know, what works for me may not work for you, right? But again, I'm an introvert too, but I do like, connecting with people occasionally. So being creative, one of the things that I've done, I was, one of my friends and we walk. So we're not walking as much as we can with all the snow and everything. But what we have done, although it was cold, we would walk. Locally where I live, we have the high school, and there's nobody in the high school. So we walk around this huge high school about 4 times. And then we our beverages. She bring her water, I bring my cup of tea, and we park our cars 6 feet apart. And we wind down our windows and we talk to each other until our beverages are finished, right? It's finished, right? But we create that kind of ritual, and we're going to look forward to it, you know, to kind of just do the walking, and if we got that in, but able to socialize, just being in each other's space, seeing each other. So you have to create that for yourself. One of the things I'm hearing, you're talking about the commute. That some people miss that commute. The reason why they said that commute broke up their day, especially people who were parents and had these other responsibilities. They said when they got on that train or they drove to work, that was their me time to spend with themselves and just breathe, right, before they went into the office. And the commute back home was another time when they would actually have that me time before they actually start their next job, which is taking care of their families. So again, it varies from one person to the other. And what I'm hearing is that this COVID, again, does not give you that boundary because everybody is in phase, and it's like there's no, this ends, work starts here, and works end here. You know, when you knew how 5 o'clock came or whatever, you knew that you'd take up your bag and you'd have to travel home. With this, you're just continuing to work. I've heard someone, I was speaking to her yesterday, she's up to 9 o'clock, she's checking emails, etc. There's no shut off. You have to create that for yourself. So one person I've been on a webinar said at 5 or whatever, 6 o'clock, whenever his workday ends, he closed down the computer and said, literally, I am done. Because that gives him that closure, that boundary. I'm done with work. Now it's time to do my other life, right?
Mm.
So it's very important from an individual standpoint that you know what works for you, and that you create structure, or you create implement structure that would actually help you to live a more balanced and healthy life despite the COVID situation that we are in, because none of us knew it was going to last this long. I mean, I think that's the key piece too, the fact that there is not other natural disasters that we have had. We knew that it started, was a hurricane. We know it ended. We saw the disaster. We knew what we had to do. With this, although we have the vaccine, there's still so many people hesitant about taking the vaccine. That's one, and that's again a personal choice. But the other side of that equation is that, you know, even though you may have taken the vaccine, doesn't mean that you can go out and socialize the way that you used to. It doesn't, right? So again, the uncertainty of this whole thing is also causing a lot of stress, emotional stress on everyone. And I think it's very important to even address the fact that so often we're talking about stress for ourselves, but it also impacts our children, you know, and it's very important for us to check in with our kids, because this schooling from home and all of this thing has an emotional toll on our kids too, and especially the younger ones. Sometimes they can't articulate what they're feeling. So as a parent, as an adult, we ourselves have sometimes to be mindful of how we are feeling, and if we're feeling this way, what are our kids feeling, and being able to ask or create a forum for them to actually talk about that, to share what's happening.
Right. And that's a really excellent point, because I'm talking about my experience being in IT for decades. So there were times when I was at my desk at midnight. So, you know, my commute might be 2 hours, 4 hours a day. So to me, the commute is the awful thing in the world, because I'm spending most of my time coming back and forth, sitting at a desk all day, and then being told that my job is not 9 to 5. So for me, not having to be in the office is the best thing ever. But again, as you're saying, it depends on your experience. It depends on what you've been through. It depends on who you are as a person. You know, some people have to have that interaction all the time. And to me, it's like, well, I could take it in doses, you know, that's okay. So I think that this is an interesting time, because it's kind of a time where people have to see what they're about and what they need and what they want, and try to find a way through all of this that's been going on. And maybe a lot of times people haven't had to do that. If we're, you know, this podcast, usually I'm interviewing entrepreneurs like yourself. And a lot of times that I found being an entrepreneur when I started was very lonely. Now, I don't even feel it that way now as I'm working as a tech writer, because I'm interacting. There's all these tools to interact on the computer with my teammates. But as an entrepreneur, I felt like, wow, I'm kind of cut off here. I don't know what anybody's doing. So a lot of why I started this podcast is because I want to talk to other people, because I didn't meet anybody who's doing this, you know? So it was really weird, and not being in the office was weird. And so I think to some degree, from my perspective, having gone through this kind of thing before, I'm in a different headspace now than I was then, because that was the first time I'd had this kind of experience. But I can understand that and I thank you for bringing all that up. I can understand now how it must feel for now. This is your first experience going through what I had gone through back then, you know, and it's like, it was weird. It was strange, and you didn't really know what to make of it. And if you've got a family and all kinds of things, your children have to have their online education. This is a new thing. It's a new thing for them. Everything has been upended.
That's so true.
You know, so I think that that's the thing also. We're at different places and different experiences, and just to kind of understand how much we're kind of used to these structures that have kind of been blown apart right now.
Exactly. And it can be overwhelming. You're saying, I'm saying it's a conscious effort to put, but we are overwhelmed. No matter like it or not, people are overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, it's very difficult difficult to even think consciously. I mean, you're just responding. You're autopilot, putting out fires, etc. And so sometimes it's although you know you need that break or that separation, it's very difficult to do that. And within New Jersey, one of the things that the state thought about initially earlier when the pandemic started was to implement programs to help free of charge to provide resources for individuals. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share some of that resources with you now because I think it's appropriate to do that. So the initiative is called New Jersey Hope and Healing. And it started out in 2012 when we had Hurricane Sandy, when people were devastated by what happened with the hurricane. And, the state realized that there were so many people who were struggling, not only physically, not because they lost their homes, etc., but people were struggling emotionally, but weren't even aware of the emotional toll what all that had happened, had taken on them. So they created New Jersey Hope and Healing, where they sent out mental health professionals on the ground at the time. We could do that to actually meet with people, assess what their needs are, not only physically, but also to help them emotionally to cope with what are some of what they were experiencing. So when COVID started, they revived New Jersey Hope and Healing. And again, they have experts, mental health professionals like myself, who work on this SAMHSA FEMA grant that provide resources to help people to 866-202-HELP or 4357. So you call 866-202-HELP or 4357. And they have mental health professionals on board who actually will just speak with you to find out what's happening, and even share resources, because it depends on where you are in New Jersey. They have a huge database. So they have resources that maybe you could benefit from that you may not be aware of that's in your area. So that's the first one. And the beauty of also New Jersey, of the call line, is that they have bilingual staff. So they can speak they have staff who can actually support other individuals who are bilingual. The other wonderful thing is that they realized earlier on this is that people text. Some people don't want to pick up the phone and speak to anyone. They don't mind texting, especially the young folks, right? Mm-hmm. So they developed a text line. And that's so cool. The text line is one in which you can text. And you have a mental health professional on the other side who can actually provide support via text. They'll text you back. Of course, they didn't choose me for that portion of it because they know I would take forever to respond to a text because it takes me forever to type a text. So they do have this text line, and it is the number is 51684. So it's 51684, and you text that number, and you could tell them that you're interested in receiving support, some support, and you'll receive some support from that end. The third component of it is the one that I'm a part of. I've been doing Zoom webinars and groups for oh my God, I'm telling you, from April of last year, I've been doing several of these. But basically, and if anyone's listening who would like to have me or some of my colleagues come in on a webinar to talk with you about self-care and what are some of the ways that you can cope, and just to listen, because sometimes people just want to share what's happening with them and learn from each other. So I've done with probation officers, libraries, the New Jersey, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is another group I'm going to be doing stuff with this coming week. Just having different groups, just being together and just talking about what are some of the challenges that we're facing, but also sharing about what are some of the things. We are resilient people, like it or not. Mm-hmm. Many of us would not be where we are if we weren't resilient. Mm-hmm. So let's identify what are some of those skills that we used in the past to be able to get through that we can actually utilize again and build on during this very challenging time. So one of the most popular training I do is resilience, strength under stress. And, we talk about what is resilience and what are some of resilience factors? What are some of the things that promote resilience, not only in ourselves, but in our children, And we talk about what are some of the ways we can build our resilient muscles. What are some of the things that we can what are some of the things that we can put in our bag of what I call bag of tricks to actually help us as we move forward. We also have groups. So, my colleagues and I have various groups. So my group is a single mom group, or parenting group. Because I'm being a single parent for most of my adult life with my kids, I know I can't imagine. My kids are all grown, but I can't imagine what parents are going through at this time with everyone in at home. So I do a parenting group on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock for an hour, where parents come in and we talk about different things. And I have a core group actually that shows up every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. And we talk about a number of things. We're in the verge of talking about habits that we may want to adopt into our lifestyles to enhance our parenting skills. What are some of the habits that we may need to kind of discard because they're not working anymore, And how do we develop these new habits? So we have a wide variety of different topics that we talk about to help people to not only cope, but also to grow through this time, as we move forward. So there are resources. Bottom line is there are resources that are available. And other states have similar programs. So look into your state to find out what kind of resources are available. Reach out to your division of mental health services. They will be able to point you in the right direction of where you could actually get some support.
So there's also other things that I've seen or just my feeling that all the things that have happened over the past year, and of course we're talking about COVID and we're talking about, if you go on social media, you're always seeing someone talking about their family member or friend has died, people not really being able to properly mourn in the rituals that we have because of social distancing. My personal feeling is all this is weighing on us energetically, even if we're blocking it. So do you feel that mental health, emotional health are finally going to be at the forefront now of conversations that we really need to have in this country?
Yeah, I really think so. And I think it has been. It has been moving towards that for quite a while. Even before this pandemic, one of the things that had taken the world, not only the United States, but the world, is an initiative called Mental Health First. And it started out in Australia in 2008. And it was a lady who is actually a mental health professional, but who has also had some mental health challenges. And she and her husband went to dinner one evening at a restaurant. And she said, when they went for a walk after, and she said, you know what I found strange? If someone in the restaurant was having a mental health challenge, I wonder what most people would do versus if someone was in that restaurant and was choking, what people would do. For the former, people would go the other way, look the other way. For the latter, people, even if you didn't have any first aid training, you'd be over there trying to do whatever, hit in the back, turn them upside down, shake them, whatever you think to do to actually help. But when it comes to mental health, people walk away, not because they're bad people, but because they don't know what to do. That's it. So what happened out of that simple conversation that she and her husband had was that they created mental health first aid. And mental health first aid is a public education program for individuals who do not have a mental health background to get a better understanding of mental health, but not only that, be able to develop skills that they can utilize when someone is developing a mental health illness or is in crisis. So just as with when somebody's choking or is stroking, you would actually do your best to keep them comfortable and call 911. 911 come, but at least while you're there, you'd have the basic skills to know what to do to keep them safe until the EMTs come. Then the same thing is happening with mental health first aid. So this training, we have been doing this not only in the United States, over last count I heard it was over 3 million people who have been trained in mental health first aid. Just lay persons being trained to know what to look for, what are some of the things to hear or listen for, so that you can actually you're not diagnosing. That's way out of our league, including mine, to diagnose someone. But you're listening to the warning signs that someone is asking for help indirectly, right? Mm-hmm. Or some of the behaviors that are indicators that this person may need some help. And social media, as we talked about, you and I in private, that, it can be a negative thing because sometimes people have their stuff and they bring it out on there. And so that's the negative part, but it can be a positive thing because you can actually sometimes, especially on Facebook and platforms like that, when people are distraught or they're going through a very difficult time, they come on and they'll write these things. But if you're not trained or not have the insight to identify that this person is saying, I'm going to kill myself, you won't ask the right questions or possibly help that person to get the help that they need to prevent that from happening. And so often we have seen where people have completed suicide, and when you look at their Facebook page, they were screaming loud and clear, I'm in crisis, but we did not have people weren't aware of what to look for so that they could actually be of support to that person.
You're definitely giving some wonderful insights here, and I think into the world of I can't say post-COVID because it's still going on, but I just think in our culture that we really don't give mental health the importance that it deserves to have. And people are demonized because they have depression and things like that. I know I have the winter. I hate to call it that because that's the most ridiculous name I've ever heard. Sad. Who thought that? Why did they think that was cute? Oh, we'll call it sad. Gee, thanks. So that makes no sense because that just makes it worse. But I'm very, and of course I'm not the only one, but I'm very sensitive to winter and darker. And right now the snow where we are covering everything. The sky is gray. Everything is gray. And I don't even open the window sometimes. I don't want to see it. Mm-hmm. And I tried my best to not focus on that. But then when it snowed last time and I couldn't, everything was covered. I couldn't clean my way out of it. I couldn't feel that sense of accomplishment. And I was so frustrated that I was just like, this is terrible. This is awful. Oh my God, I can't get out because I felt trapped that I couldn't get out. And that really wasn't it. I could have gotten out if I had somewhere to go, but just the thought of it, of that snow and everything is white and everything is bland and I can't see any color was making me really feel anxious. And I think that we really, a lot of times we don't discuss how these things affect people, or we demonize them, or we say if something's wrong with you, or just exaggerate. That's terrible. You're not supposed to show how you feel. You're supposed to keep it closed in. And to me, just as my assessment in this culture, we tend not to take these things seriously, or we just say something's wrong with someone, or we just call them crazy, quote unquote, and dismiss what they feel. But I think in terms of what we've been through over this past year, the government almost falling.
Yeah, we have so many things happening, so many layers here.
People dying.
Yeah, you're right.
We have to kind of look at that as a people and say, yeah, this was messed up, and people have feelings about this, and we can't pretend it didn't happen or it's not happening.
Right. I totally agree. And that's why some of the resources, like what I mentioned, like New Jersey Hope and Healing, people need a space to talk and feel safe that they can actually speak, voice how they're feeling and not feel judged or anything like that. That's so critical, because just to be able to voice. So many people have come on the calls. I've done calls where we have had survivors of COVID. In fact, we have a group for COVID survivors, and just to be able to, one woman, she lost her husband for 50 odd years, going on close to 60 years they were married, and both of them had COVID. They were wheeled into the hospital together, and that was the last time she saw her husband. When she was released from the hospital, that's when she found out that her husband died. And she was saying how difficult it was. It has been just coping, and family members and people around her. But she said she don't want to burden them with her how she's feeling, but just being on the call and just being able to share with a group of strangers, and have people just listen to her. That was so therapeutic for her. So sometimes we can't change what's happening for people, but just giving them a safe space that they can actually share how they're feeling, verbalize it, can make a huge world of a difference to others. And that was one of the things I want to challenge us to do. Is part of resilience is also not just focusing on ourselves, because sometimes just focusing on ourselves, we can get into a dark space. But when we can actually reach out to somebody and say, oh, hi, Deborah, how are you doing today? I've been thinking about you. Just even to just make that connection, it takes us out of ourselves and actually connects us to another human being, and vice versa. So, we're in very difficult times, and we're in very challenging times, and we will get through this, because we are. Everyone here, hearing, listen to my voice, you are a resilient person, and you will get through this, although sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And I suggest just reach out and share how you're feeling with someone else, someone who you trust and who you just don't want to be. Just don't want to be judged. You just want to be able to share how you're feeling, and there are resources out there that can help you too.
Well, that's really good to share, because a lot of times people may not realize what's available to them, for them to have. And I think particularly another reason why I wanted to do this, because I know a lot of times business owners may have felt a lot of losses during this time, and a lot of uncertainty about what they should do next, and how they can pivot to something else that maybe they don't realize is there for them. And maybe there's a sense of hopelessness for a lot of people who thought they were on a certain path and everything was fine. And then suddenly this thing comes up, and no one really was predicting to shake up everything the way it has.
A lot of business owners, especially small business owners like myself, have significantly been impacted. My business was being out training, doing all this thing. And when COVID started, everybody went zing, there was zero, and then you panic in a situation like that, because that's your livelihood, right? And so it in a sense, it kind of put you in a space of being creative, of actually, personally have to reevaluate how I conduct my business now. And that brings up the training that I wrote, the self-help training series that I wrote, because I found that people are struggling, and it's a great time for us to reevaluate our lives. The way that who we were pre-COVID is not who we are now today, and who we are. So we have to be continuously reevaluating ourselves, because we have more that we can have to offer. It's just what we have put out so far is nothing compared what is within that can be manifested, right? So how do we tap into that inner self to kind of really figure out, what's next? Where do I take my business next? Where do I, and not only just in terms of taking the business for monetary focus, but that's going to bring me fulfillment in terms of what I'm doing. That at the end of a work day, I can say, I did my best. I'm doing what I really want to do. And so it's a great time for self-reflection. And so one of the things that I did recently was write a course on Teachable. And the title is, Who Am I? Because I think that's the core of the core foundation to help propel us to where we need to go is to be able to connect with who am I? Who am I? Who's Faith Saunders? And to be able to look at those things that help me to thrive and have helped me to be who I am, but also those things that have gotten in the way, of me really presenting myself in an authentic way to the world. And many of us have baggages. We're walking around with these baggages, most of which is limiting our full potential, but we're not even aware of it. So the course has activities in it to help you, and it's a self-paced course to help you kind of figure out, what do I have going for me? Because we have a lot going for us. So for most people, we ask them what they have going for them. They have to think so much, and we ask them, what are some of the things that you need to work on? Oh God, they could fill up a full book, just and not so. We more have a tendency to go to the negative than to the positive. So what do we have going on with us that we have learned and that we can actually build on moving forward, and what are some of the things that we are carrying as baggage that we need to kind of let go of to help us propel us to that next level. So I think it's a time for self-reflection, and we're not going out and we don't have those other distractions to take our attention off in one respect, for us to be able to be in a quiet space and really work through some of this for ourselves. So from a business owner standpoint, I had to do, and I'm still working through that, doing that self-reflection for myself, but also in terms of where's my business going, because some of the ways that I was doing business before, this pandemic shows that it's not necessarily the best way. I've done so many trainings online, touch a broader audience. It has been a blessing, but it has been a curse, but it has been a blessing also, because I have done work that normally I wouldn't have done in the past, and reach a broader audience outside of New Jersey than I was when I was, prior to the pandemic. So again, this is a great opportunity to reevaluate yourself, your business, and come up with a new, really come up with a more concrete plan that reflects the new you. Put it that way.
That's a great way to put it, actually, because I think for a lot of people, they may have thought, well, I know what I'm doing and I'm going, things are always going to be this way. And then they find out that no, things can come out of any direction and throw everything off. And now what are you going to do? How are you going to adjust for this? And it kind of shows, well, some people can adjust, and then there's many reasons why you may not be able to, but others may go, oh, there's an opportunity here I never saw before, and let me try this and see what works, because you're kind of forced to have to do that.
And I also, you mentioned for those people who can't adjust in terms of maybe can't salvage the business that they had or the structure that they had, so it's very important not to look at that as a failure. I think that's our perspective. I think that's the bottom line, our overall perspective, how we look at a situation. Because this pandemic came and the way things are, you cannot continue the business that you had. That is not a failure. The fact that it's a great success because you did something that other people have ideas and they never done anything to put it in, to make it reality. You did something towards making that a reality. And that doesn't mean that in the future you can't go back to it. Maybe right now, based on the circumstances, whatever it is, you can. But there's so much data there that you have that somebody who just thought about it doesn't have. You did it. So now you have so much data to work with that somebody else didn't have, and use that to your advantage, right? Because that experience is priceless. It's not somebody telling you that, if you do this, this will turn, or this will that. Because you did it. You lived it. So use that data to help you to propel to that next level. And so maybe you have to have a temporary plan that takes you off track. That's okay, because who knows what's down on that side street? You may strike gold, the experiences or the people you may come into contact with. So again, it's about perspective. What you have done and where you are is you have you are a success no matter what is happening. You did something, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is very important to really reiterate at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point. I think that a lot of times people don't consider, because they just have their idea of where they're supposed to be, but they don't realize that maybe there's other opportunities there that now they're being led to, that they don't see because they were so sure that, well, this thing here, but they may be led to something that's really where they need to go, but they don't really see that this isn't a negative, maybe leading them to something much better. And that's more, exactly. Yeah. It's definitely a perspective that we have to look at things a little differently. And I think also, since we're talking a lot about mental health and self-care here, and I think I was mentioning before we got started as to another entrepreneur that I know that's also creative, and she's shutting down her social media right now because she just has to practice self-care because so many things have happened over the past year, and she feels she can't continue in this way. And she does a newsletter, she does some things, and she creates some really nice art, but she's pulling back. And, I'd mentioned that there's a documentary, and for those listening also, I've mentioned this before in a different podcast called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. It really talks about the creation of social media, what a lot of the people who have worked in that industry in the higher levels even are now saying, well, maybe this wasn't such a good thing the way we created it. And some of them even are saying they don't allow their children to be on it, which I think is very interesting because now everybody else's kids are on it.
Wow.
They're like, well, this isn't.
There's something wrong with that picture.
Yeah, when they said, when a couple of them said that, I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? That now you're protecting your family, but you put this out here for everybody else. And how it's designed to hit these psychological triggers to get people to have certain responses. And we can see to some degree how a lot of that has been very negative and hurtful, and sometimes have driven people to certain things because they're being triggered or they're being hurt or harmed in some way. And, I'm not one of these people who's saying you should get rid of social media, but at the same time, I'm looking at some things and how I know that I'm receiving it and how I feel affected by some things I'm seeing that seem really negative and hurtful to my mental, emotional health. And I just want to say, as a professional and as you've dealt with all these different things, what are some of your takes on how people maybe can have more of a healthy relationship with social media?
Right. I totally agree with you that some people are just we're all addicted with our phones. I mean, if we're being honest here, I'm being honest. I mean, my phone is next to my bed, and as soon as I get up, I have to force myself not to grab my phone and see what was the latest thing that happened, or to look for text or whatever. We are all connected to these things. And I mean, just even trying to leave your phone at home. I mean, if you left your phone at home, I can tell you for me, I am right back. Sorry, I have to go get my phone. Right? So, I mean, these things, we're kind of addicted to them in a sense, and so again, we have to look at, each person has to do a self-evaluation to see what's healthy. Is this really a healthy way, or the way that I want to spend my life? How many hours of the day, and I'm spending it on Facebook, writing, looking at what people ate for dinner, or what they, is that important in the bigger schemes of things? Is this how I want to spend my life? When that day they're reading my obituary at that thing, Faith spent 21 of 24 hours each day looking on Facebook, whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But again, it's a self-evaluation. I mean, we have to be mindful of, and sometimes we need to take that mental break. Just kind of turn off the phone even for a weekend. I've had friends who have done that. Like, they turn off their phones and they don't talk to anyone or anything. That's their time. They just need to just shut down. And so you're right. It's very important for us to kind of be mindful of that. And some of these things, we even have some very toxic relationships on some of these platforms also. Sometimes we just need to shut certain people off because they're not good for our overall mental wellness, Mm-hmm. So, it's very, and it and again, with everything with moderation, you know, you have to, you can't throw the baby with the bathwater. There is some moderation. We learn certain things from these platforms. We get to connect with people, learn new things, etc. But again, what is healthy versus verging on the point of being unhealthy? So again, it's a self-evaluation, and I think I love what your friend is doing. Is kind of saying, you know what, I'm shutting down for a time now. I just need a break from all of this, so I can actually regroup and recenter and really kind of redo my self-evaluation to move forward. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of advantages to doing that, to stepping away, because sometimes it is very toxic, and I think it's very easy to be drawn into the toxic part when you're feeling some kind of way. Because I know I've done that myself. You know, if you're feeling a level of frustration, or someone said something you don't like, and then you see people piling on, and there's almost some sense of satisfaction watching that. And then you're like, well, why am I enjoying this? And why is this good? You know, it's like, and then someone else's turn to get dragged. And then you're like, but this shouldn't be entertainment. You know, it shouldn't, this is something going on here that isn't healthy. And I think that's a lot. That's, you know, kind of what that documentary was touching on, that it's kind of touching on certain parts of us as human beings and our reactions, and using that to get us to respond and guide our responses in ways that, again, get the platform to get more from us, even if it's money, because we want to pay for a promotion or pay for this, but it's engagement that they're looking for, but they're kind of going towards the dark side to get it.
Exactly. And that's the bottom line. It's not like it's about money. Like it or not, you may not pay to be on Facebook, but in the long run, it's meaning dollars for Facebook and Instagram and all those platforms. So they're not doing this for free. Like it or not, you know. We may not be paying for it, but in the long run, it's meaning dollars for them. So, but in the long run, it's taking advantage of us so that they can meet their bottom line or their financial rewards from whatever they want from it. So again, I said this to you earlier, Deb, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. Nobody else will. You know, people care about you, but after a while, and frankly, it's not their responsibility. Our own overall wellness is our own responsibility. It's not somebody else's. And we're all adults, and we need to do that. We need to do that, and also teach our children, because it's not about only us. It's like children are like sponge. I say this so often, that children are like sponge. They are soaking up what they're seeing, consciously as well as subconsciously. And so how we live our life and how we show up is our role. We are being role models to them of what seems to be okay or what is not okay. But that usually for especially younger kids, they don't know the difference, right? So they're adapting things, maybe some behaviors that are just not really healthy for them in the long run. So we have a responsibility to ourselves and to others in terms of, like, especially younger folks, in terms of how we're navigating our lives.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that's important for people to note. So as far as your course, and well, I guess now's a great time for you to let people know where they can find out more about you, and also about your course and your book and workbook and everything.
I have so many things happening.
Yes, and you have your Etsy site, so
yes, I have a ton of those things happening, folks. So my thing is always about self-help, self-care, basically. How can I provide a resource or resources to help people to live their best lives? And so often we're not around people to do that. It's something that's more introspective work. So most of the tools that I offer for that to happen is things that you can actually utilize on an individual basis to do that. So I mentioned the course, which is available on Teachable, and it's Discover a New Future at Teachable. And you'll be able to see the course, and it's called Who Am I? And again, its average is about 3 hours. But again, it's not a course. for that, within taking time to do the material. It's not a course that I want people to just go through and just run through. It really involves you to take some time to think about some of the questions and answer them and the exercises that are there. So, so that's one of the things. The other thing that I have is a book, which is also available on Amazon, and it's called Break Free, 52 Tips to Escape from Your Self-Imposed Prison, folks. And basically what the book is saying is what it is. It's not again, easy read. My piece is that we have enough information. We just need to do something, right? So it's a workbook that addresses 52 key areas of our lives, things that actually get in the way of us living our most authentic, healthy self. And it have activities to do for each of the different chapters. The other tools that I have is I have a journal. It's called Journal to Wellness. A Journal to Wellness also available on Amazon, but all these are also available on my Etsy site. I'll give you the information in a bit. But it's Journal to Wellness. It's a journal, but it's a journal with a twist. My thing, as if we're going to be authentic here, I'm someone who I'll struggle occasionally with depression. And one of the things I know, and I journal, that is my key way of actually helping in my wellness, is to write. And what I've found over the years is that when I write, especially when I'm in my what I call valley experience, I am just digging a deeper hole by talking about everything that is not good, everything that's not going well, right? And it's not making me feel better, although I'm writing. So one of the things that a process that I developed and I tested was having not only just writing what I'm feeling, which is important, but the next step is to write about what I'm grateful for, because that does a kind of switch in the brain, you know, because you're talking about all this negative thing, but also you're switching your brain to say, despite all that's happening here, there's so much things that I can be grateful for, right? Mm-hmm. And switching that to the gratitude. And then after that, what am I going to do? That's usually where the missing link is that we're not doing anything about it. We talk about it, but we're not doing the actions that are needed to get us from point A to point B in whatever we're doing. So the next step is based on what we're feeling, what we're grateful for, what is that next step that I need to take in order to move from where I am to where I want to be? Just one baby step, you know, one little thing that day. And then the last piece is, what can I do for someone else? What's one little thing I can do, step outside of myself to do to make somebody else's life a little bit different? And usually has nothing to do with money. It's usually be a little text, a little email, a little quick call, something, right? So that's Journal to Wellness, and to help people kind of not just only think, but do some actions to get them from where they are to where they want to be. The other tool that I have that has been the most that's most profitable of all my endeavors here is the Messages in a Tin. Messages in a Tin is a series of little tins. They're 2x2 tin with a little see-through window, and they have 52 inspirational quotes in it and challenging questions. And for each of these, it has a quote, and then it has a question about what's in the quote. And I wish I had one with me so I could actually read it to you, but I don't. But again, these are all available on my Etsy site at this time. And the site is www.etsy.com/shop, SHOP/discover a new future. That's the name of my company. And you'll go and you'll see all the different products that I just described to you. So again, it's all about wellness as far as I'm concerned, and providing tools that people can actually use on a daily basis to help them in that endeavor. So thank you so much, Ms. Deb, for giving me that little plug.
Well, I knew you had a lot of things, and we'll definitely add the links to the show notes so people can get to everything that you're providing, and they can learn how to really do some self-care and feel better and get through all of this drama.
Exactly. And again, if you want to, you could actually also put my information regarding for the New Jersey Hope and Healing. If anybody has a group or just a new one that you want someone to come in and speak for, it's all free. So if you're taking some from the States, take it. It's free. Yes. You don't have to pay for it. You know, to just give people a space where they can actually share, and we can talk about, what are some of their needs and so forth, and provide some support in whatever shape or form that's needed.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to reach out, to know that they can, because a lot of times people don't reach out because they feel like they can't or they shouldn't, or they're not always comfortable showing that they're vulnerable, that they need help with something. And that's another thing I think people need to work through and get past, because I know I have had to do that myself. And you feel like you shouldn't have to ask for help because you should be able to do it all. And that's not normal. That's not healthy. Like I said, I just went through that with the snow, where I felt like, well, I've always been able to clean the snow. Why can't I clean the I've got this big blower. What's the problem? There I went stuck.
More than you can manage right now, Deb. You need help.
I needed help. I was stuck and I couldn't move the thing. And it was like, it doesn't matter. There's a point where you can't do it all. You can't do it. So just admit you can't do it. Thank God that you can pay for someone to do it. Because what if you couldn't? Then it would still be out there right now. I would just wait till the spring thaw, because so I'm thankful that I could do it, but I understand how that feels where you feel like you're supposed to do it all. And I coming back around to, other, people who may own businesses or be doing something on the side or dealing with their families or any kind of other challenge they may already have had, any health challenge they may have had or mental, emotional challenge they've had. And now that all this is going on, and that's all these layers that are on top of what's already happening. And not to feel that you are a bad person because somehow you can't get through all this.
Exactly.
I think that was really important thing to note, I think. And also, like I said before, seeing so much on social media about people saying people passing away and their anguish about these things and feeling helpless and all of that I think collectively we have to find a way to confront and manage and not push under the rug at some point when this hopefully is resolved in some way. I would hate to think that people try to forget this like it didn't happen.
Right. It's a part of the whole resiliency. You are resilient. With nothing else to remember, you are resilient and you'll get through this. But sometimes we can't do it alone. We just need to allow other people in. And realize that we need, we're no man is an island. We all need each other.
Right. And definitely I think it's just the idea that of people realizing what we've all been through, and I guess the world, because this has affected everyone. It's not just the United States. There's just been an extra level of nonsense here, but that's a whole other conversation. And I'm not going to get to here because then I'll just go on forever. But we have to acknowledge that this has been a shift, in general for us all. And we have to acknowledge that and not pretend it didn't happen. And now how do we deal with this on some level that's healthy and practice self-care for ourselves? Kind of accept that and not run away from it. I think that's really, really important because a lot has happened and continues to happen right now. So that's part of why I really wanted to do this. But, Faith, do you have any final thoughts about what we've shared or anything else that you want to share about this topic?
No, I just want to share that, acknowledge that you have been through a very tough year. This is unprecedented. We have never seen anything, and I don't think in our lifetime we'll ever see anything like that. And just the fact again that you're here and we are resilient. Some people have lost loved ones. There's so many things that has been a result of this pandemic and continue to be. So promise yourself that you're important enough to practice self-care, that you're going to do each day, 5 minutes each day to do something for yourself because you're worth it. That's the bottom line.
Well, that's perfect. That's well said, because that's really true. And I think a lot of times people don't always feel that they are worth it and that they are important, and they really should feel that way. We've covered so much, your faith, and I really want to thank you for coming and sharing everything that you're doing and sharing all your resources and everything. I think this has been very helpful, so I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Deborah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. You know, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I could have gone on.
Yeah. I said, okay, who would be a good person to have this conversation with? So I think I definitely had this in mind for a little while, but I really didn't have the opportunity to pull it together. So I'm really glad we could do this right now. So that's really really great, and I'm sure the people listening will get a lot out of this and hopefully have their own conversations about this, because I think it's something we have to continue to talk about and to really address. So everyone, this has been Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to stop by womenentrepreneursradio.com to read extended bios of the show guests, and also find links there for their websites and any offers that they have shared with you. And stop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/womenentrepreneurs.